On the ATL Fan podcast, at the beginning of the show, we give you an international flavor of all the big events that has happened over this past weekend. Then I sit down with Itoro Umontuen to talk about the goings-on at SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame. Right now, I just want to tell you guys about a little secret, especially if you are a small business owner or you're a CEO of a company that's about to be a Fortune 500 company, or you're one of those people that just works from home or remote because your company is somewhere out there and it's not in the Atlanta area. Well, I want to let you know about Spaces Midtown East, and Spaces Midtown East has a friendly staff. They are very open and welcome to the type of business that you are running. And just to tell you more about it, we have the regional manager here from Spaces Midtown East, Steve Choi.
Oh, thank you, Alex, and thanks for getting that secret out there. And absolutely not many people know, but I think they're starting to learn more and more about what we do. We here at Spaces Midtown, we provide both collaborative space as well as private space for all types of professionals, whether that be individuals like yourself or small companies and even large companies. And so I really do appreciate you giving us a chance to get a shout out there. And I absolutely enjoy having you and fans' favorite fan come out. So if anybody out there wants to come take a look at what Spaces Midtown East is about, let us know that Alex sent you. We'll offer you a 5-day test drive. Go to www.spacesworks.com and come on in and set up a time, and we'll have you come in and take a test drive for free.
Thank you, Steve, for those kind words and that information, because I definitely couldn't remember that off the top of my head. So I definitely appreciate that. It is a block north from the Fox Theater, and if you've lived in this city for about a year, you know where the Fox Theater is. So just check them out. They're right on Peachtree Street, and I'm going to put the link to their website in our show description. So be sure to check out Spaces Midtown, and they'll definitely hook you up. I feel like the All-Star game last night, if you guys were watching the All-Star game last night, I felt like it didn't really disappoint, which there's not really that high expectations for the All-Star game, and the All-Star game to me was what the All-Star game is supposed to be nowadays in our culture, just plain out boring, and who really cares too much. I mean, basketball, All-Star game, those are exciting. Football is exciting because both of those sports are just naturally exciting sports, but baseball nowadays has kind of fallen off the map and the rails, especially like with just an all-star game. I get that your grandparents probably would enjoy that, but to me, to my generation, I didn't really enjoy it last night. I mean, I was distracted doing other things. There are other distractions out there like SEC Media Days, for example. But the great thing about that is the Home Run Derby, and the Home Run Derby was pretty awesome, seeing Bryce Harper win it in his stadium because the game was in Washington, so that was really cool. I feel like, to me, that's the highlight of the summer. I feel like they should just scrap the All-Star game and just do the Home Run Derby. I mean, because home runs are exciting, they're fun, and who doesn't love home runs, right, Steve? Yeah, and that's Steve Choi joining us for this bit of the show. But yeah, yeah, just kind of boring. But this is pretty much since this is our first show And I know for a lot of you guys listening, this probably stuff is in the rearview mirror, but we're still going to touch on this briefly, just kind of touch it a little bit. But yeah, I just want to give a shout out to France. And France, how are you feeling today? That was a video from the Facebook page of ESPN.com. So, yeah, shout out to that foreign letter network. Shout out to ESPN's Facebook page. They come up with some clever little videos there. But another thing that happened, and congratulations to France for winning the World Cup in such a terrible place like Russia. So yeah, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Always trying to make people laugh, and but I got distracted for a second. But yes, we have Steve Troy here, and at Fan's Favorite Fan, we really don't have a tennis expert, but Steve is a avid tennis watching fan. So, Steve, what was your impressions of Wimbledon? Because that was the other thing that was going on in around the world. I was going to say Europe, but the World Cup happened in Russia, and that's not necessarily Europe. That's its own territory. So, yeah, what were your impressions of the of Wimbledon this past weekend in jolly old London?
Wimbledon was awesome. There was a lot of storylines going into it. Most of the storylines were about comebacks. The most popular one was of Serena Williams coming back from giving birth just a year ago. Her second tournament back. She already made it to the finals. I'm looking forward to seeing what she's going to do in the U.S. Open. But that was surprising. I don't think anybody really thought she'd make it that far, but then again, I don't think anybody doubted her. I mean, Serena Williams is the greatest female tennis player, if not tennis player, ever. So
you're putting that on her. You're putting that title, the GOAT.
Yes,
and she's not even close to retirement.
I mean, she can retire at any time and still be the most accomplished tennis player ever. So I don't think she should retire. I don't know what's motivating her, but it sounds like she still has a fire in her belly. So that's awesome for us, because I don't really see anybody in the wings from the U.S. to take her place just yet. I mean, there's a few women out there that are kind of talented. Anyway, with other storylines, your boy John Isner from UGA, another amazing match, the second longest match in history. Only second to his first longest match in history.
Right.
Unfortunately, he lost, but crazy
to
skills. South African guy that ended up losing in the final to Novak Djokovic, a.k.a. the Joker. Yeah, the Joker. And that was another comeback story, because he had been actually struggling for about a year and a half. So no one thought he was going to come back and win the tournament either. So a lot of storylines. Love Wimbledon. Love watching the grass.
Love watching the grass.
I love watching the grass. I wish I could be playing on grass.
I want to go somewhere else with that, but this is a PG podcast.
Okay,
that's what Dawn told me.
Absolutely.
When
no. I just
mean
it's a really fun surface. Like here in the States, all you ever really have to play on.
It's
a
nice
hard
scenery,
course.
Right?
It's beautiful. It's like golf,
right?
Like you kind of just want to go and touch the green.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And by the way, South African accents, in my opinion, are pretty awesome.
They're definitely interesting. Can you do one?
I can't do one.
Okay.
I can't do one justice.
That's the challenge. One of these days, we're going to need to hear that on the podcast.
Okay. But yeah, that's and it's interesting how you brought up John Isner too.
Right.
When you say like he's my boy because I'm a Georgia fan.
That's right.
Honestly, the first time I heard about John Isner, and I hate saying this, I heard about him when he had the first time he had a long match.
Yeah.
And it's like you find out, oh, he's from Georgia.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's one of those weird things. It's like you find out about people after they graduate. Well, the same thing with Bubba Watson too.
True. Bubba Watson, absolutely. But Georgia University of Georgia, UGA, has a really, really strong tennis program.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm from
Dan
the Bay.
McGill.
I'm from the Bay. So Stanford is always usually number one or
Right.
two, only second to Georgia, or with Georgia following right behind them. So that's a big rivalry between Georgia and Stanford when it comes to tennis.
Interesting, very interesting. Hey, I mean, I bet on a SEC Media Days podcast, you wouldn't be thinking tennis, but yes, Dan McGill and Maddie Diaz has really built that program up.
Definitely. So, anyways, great tournament.
Anyways, too, on Bulldogs game day on Channel 2, they actually had Maddie Diaz and a couple other coaches that have been at the university for a long time. So it was interesting hearing their take.
Okay.
So,
nice.
So yeah, just kind of a side note right there. But I'm Alex Berger. This is the ATL Fan Podcast. We are with fansfavoritefan.com. So be sure to check out that website, preferably after you listen to this podcast. But if you're a real sports fan, you're definitely going to love fansfavoritefan.com. Well, we are joined today on the ATL Fan Podcast with a very busy man, but we are glad that he took time out of his day to come on the show today. And here at Fan's Favorite Fan, he is our media guru. He takes pictures, he writes articles, he comes on this podcast, and definitely grateful to have Itoro Umontuen on the show today. Itoro, how are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good, Alex. How are you?
I'm great. This has been an exciting couple of days here. This is what the city was ready for. So what have been your impressions of SEC Media Day so far?
I think these past going on, we wrapped up Tuesday, and I feel like SEC Media Days has been, I feel like a lot of people really love the novelty that it's outside of Hoover.
Right.
People don't really know, folks really don't know how to deal with, I won't say how to deal with it, but they're embracing the fact that Commissioner Sankey said we're going to take media days around the Southeast. And the fact that it's not in Hoover, Alabama, the fact that it's in a big city with things to do, there were media people downstairs making all different kinds of reservations for going to dinner tonight. Now, I think in Hoover, it's like all you had was the Hooters and the restaurants that surrounded the mall.
The River City Mall, yep.
The River City Mall. So it's like they don't really know what to do. They come to a place like this. It's like, oh wow. There's Houston's, and there's Ruth Chris, and there's Benihana, and there's the Chop House, and it's like, hey.
And there's Pond City Market. And
it's like, hey, we've got things to do. I should have brought my wife along. But as far as what's going on in the hall, I feel like people love that huge, giant screen over their heads. I think that gives that evil empire look that some coaches loathe and love. I think we'll see that tomorrow with Nick. Nick will probably play that up tomorrow. But all in all, Media Days has been, things are progressing rather smoothly, and the pace is only going to pick up from here.
Now, let me talk to you about yesterday. You had Jimbo Fisher, which was the big headline. Then you had Ed Orgeron and Mark Stoops. When I always hear Stoops, Bob always pops in my head. That's just something I'm going to have to get rid of. But you had those coaches there. What did you feel like? How did you feel like the first day went?
I felt like the first day went pretty well. I felt like, Jimbo, the biggest thing with Jimbo yesterday was he had to answer the questions of he had to answer the questions that A&M is facing Clemson and Alabama in the first month of the season. And I think that is where, he kind of had this really concerned look on his face.
Right.
Because it occurred, it hit him like, okay, my season could end in September, because first five games of the season, you've got Clemson on the 9th, Alabama on the 22nd, and then you play Arkansas on September 29th at Jerry World. So those are 3 games that's going to define their season.
Right.
And he had this look on his face like, man, this is big, this is enormous, and if we come out of here, if we leave September 2 and 3, questions will be asked already, like, did Texas A&M waste their money? Is Jimbo already isn't meeting expectations, and we just getting out of the gate?
Right.
I don't think it may or may not be fair, but those are the kinds of questions that people are going to ask, and people will say these things about them.
Now with Mark Stoops, do you feel like Kentucky could actually be relevant at all in the SEC East?
Biggest thing about Kentucky is that they, if you take the bowl game, you take the Florida game, and I believe against Ole Miss, they lost those 3 games by a total of 5 points. And that's a difference between 7-6 and 10-3. Right. Okay. So the phrase du jour that they kept saying was, we're tired of being close. Right. Talking with Benny Snell, their all-world offensive superstar, he basically echoed those things like Kentucky. We've got a chip on our shoulder. We're tired of being, next to Florida.
Yeah, tired of losing close games.
They asked about getting over the hump against Florida. Right. And they just said, listen, the time for almost is over because almost ain't good enough. Right. So will Tennessee's rebuilding, Vandy, they always have a signature win each year. Vandy does. But the rest of the league outside of Georgia and maybe Mizzou, the rest of the East is rebuilding.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a fair statement.
So it's not outside the realm of possibility that Kentucky can have 8-9 wins heading into or 9 or 10 wins heading into the bowl game. I don't know who their SEC West opponents are off the top of my head, but I think if they are able to finish games, they could win 9-10 games this year.
Right, right. Now, speaking of just records at the end of the season, I know right now you're looking at a LSU team that pretty much has a murderous row schedule starting the season out playing Miami. How do you feel like they're going to navigate that schedule?
Biggest thing about their schedule is as long as they play defense with it in the way that we know they're capable of, they're going to be in every game. They've got running backs, they got offensive line, they got NFL receivers, they got, of course, as I said earlier, an NFL caliber defense. The biggest thing is they've got 4 quarterbacks, and they brought in the graduate transfer from Ohio State who backed up Cardale Jones and J.T. Barrett. Mm-hmm. For 3 years.
Right.
Never really saw the field. So they say if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. LSU has 4. That Coach O said himself, this contest is going to last through the summer, through fall camp, and maybe I'll pick a quarterback before the Miami game.
But that's not a great scenario to be in.
No, it's not great at all, knowing that in addition to the fact that Coach O's job is on the line.
Right.
Even though, yes, he's loved.
So you think that they're going to, if he doesn't have a great season this year, you think that they're going to get rid of him? They're not going to give him another year?
I think the fan base will give him another year. Mm-hmm. Now, will Oliva give him another year, considering how he botched the Jimbo Fisher situation, considering how he botched the Let's Smile situation? I don't think the fan base will react kindly to him, to Oliva, if he fires Orgeron after the season.
Gotcha.
The fan base loves what Coach O's all about.
Right.
So I think this is where, again, the third year or fourth year running where Oliva's in a no-win situation.
Right. Yeah, because I think with like Georgia fans, Kirby Smart is like the typical Georgia guy, and for LSU fans, that it's like Coach O is that fan who just happens to be the head coach.
He's one of them.
Right, exactly.
And I think, we listened to. We watched Matt Luke on stage today. We watched Kirby today as well. Coach O yesterday. Fans want to see themselves in their coaches. Right. Fans want to see the coach give a damn just as much as they do.
Right.
Fans are tired of the canned answers and the coach speak. Coach O is far from coach speak and canned answers and cliches. So I think the biggest thing here is just making sure that if they're able to find a quarterback, they'll win 10, 11 games. Right. They might lose against Bama, but they'll win 10 or 11 games.
Right. Well, here's the great things about recording at SEC Media Days live on site. We got a little bit interrupted there, but it's okay. We're still on track. We're here recording at the Omni Hotel that's connected to the CNN Center in downtown Atlanta. So back with Itoro, and Itoro, I just want to talk to you about today because yesterday was kind of but today in the SEC Media Days, it felt like the hard hitters came out with Kirby Smart and Dan Mullen. So just talk to me, what was that experience like, because Georgia fans really showed up and showed out, like that picture that you sent me today at the line, trying to get into the College Football Hall of Fame.
I think Kirby Smart, to start it off, Kirby Smart, he was out here really, he was more like a pastor out there today.
Right.
He was dropping all kinds of gems and dimes and quotables. When he said this morning that pressure is a privilege, it kind of, the mood in the room, everybody just rubbed their chins and was like, why is pressure a privilege, Kirby?
Only real football people have heard that saying before.
And how Kirby turned that around was just like, listen, if you're put in a position to do what you love and honor the people that have invested time into your craft and what you do, then the pressure is that obligation of paying off their investment by doing well on the field, doing well in your craft, making good grades, all these different things. So that is the way that pressure is a privilege, because it's a privilege to be in the position we're in right now.
Right.
And I explained that I was talking to a representative of the Sugar Bowl this morning, and she came away, she was an Alabama alum, she came away like, wow, Kirby is really preaching in here. and I mean, and I think that set the tone, because it was more of a he kind of approached it like the Touchdown Club of Athens today. And I think, considering that it was 9 a.m. and we just got done hearing from Steve Shaw, the coordinator of officials. It was like, this is nice. We can ease into the day right here.
Right.
So Kirby starting out was amazing.
Yeah, and he seemed like that this isn't his third time at this. He seemed like he's been doing this for 10 years.
And he even said that, yes, I'm still, even though he's been in the league at the same time, he also went up there and said that he's a young coach himself, and that he's not in the business of handing out advice. But he's willing to learn and willing to take notes, and he also understands that delegating is the key for him, because the first year he was hands-on with everything and master of nothing. Now he's learned how to be, I'm not going to say he's a CEO head coach, but because that's not him. But at the same time, I think Kirby is understanding the power of delegation and understanding that, empowering the assistant coaches, elevating position coaches to assistant head coach. Empowering them to do their jobs, to take contribute ideas in recruiting.
Right.
Having a greater say-so in the game plan.
Right.
Having a greater say-so in discipline. These are the things those are the things that Nick Saban had to do, and Kirby was one of those people.
Right.
One of those assistant head coaches that took on those tasks that Nick didn't want to do because Nick had to handle the political side of being an SEC head coach.
Right. Do you feel like the program has the tools to be consistent? Because we know they have the tools to get to the national championship, but do you feel like they have the tools to be consistent at all?
That's Kirby's biggest thing, because there was a story going back to G-Day where Kirby talked about how, Kirby didn't say it, but this was some prominent boosters told me about how during the spring football period, the team was practicing. Kirby didn't like what he saw and just said, listen, we're going to start this all over with a few expletives mixed in there. Because the consistency in the level was not good, and it wasn't where the standard wasn't where he expected his team to play at and practice at, because Kirby believes that you play like you practice. So you practicing like trash. I'm not going to put trash on national television.
Right.
So started practice all the way over from square one, and they had been going for 35 minutes.
Wow.
So when we talk about consistency and standard, that's where it's built.
Right.
And he understands that more than anybody.
Right. And speaking of national television, they actually were on CBS 6 times last year. So he has an in-demand product. But I wanted to get your thoughts just on Arkansas's program and Ole Miss's program, where they are with Matt Luke, because at first I wasn't totally sold on Matt Luke, but I just saw a story. I saw a thing on the SEC Network today, watching the coverage, that the AD came in there and was just like, we've done a national search for your next head coach, and here he is. And it was Matt Luke, and all the players just went crazy because he was the interim head coach at that time, and that's who the guys wanted. So he's a player's coach, so he has that advantage.
He also played in the program too.
Right.
Lifelong, runs in his blood. His father, his father played for Ole Miss. He's got family members that played for Ole Miss, so he understands what being a Rebel means in that family, and the honor that he wants to transfer that honor to the players as well. And even though they've got scholarship reductions, even though they've got the bowl ban, he's not going to let those things be an excuse.
Right.
So, he was very optimistic. One of the other things I've noticed about Coach Luke was that he gives a lot of short answers.
Right. He does. He does.
Gives a lot of short answers. So, he will penalize people. He penalizes people for brevity. So, but at the end of the day, I feel like he's the perfect coach. He is the perfect coach that for their situation.
Right. He is.
Because you want a coach who is going to be there for the long haul. He's going to not, take the money and run, as the song says.
Right.
So I don't believe that. I think whether he does well or not, whether he wins games this year or not, I think that's immaterial. He's just got to get the program cleaned up.
Right. Now, to end the day, Dan Mullen, who is coming with a lot of hype, and Gator Nation is just ecstatic, to just say the least. I mean, I saw on the coverage today on the SEC Network, there were 3 dudes there that had like 10 Gator helmets that they wanted signed by Dan Mullen. So that's just the enthusiasm that the fan base has for Dan Mullen. And Itoro, I just want to get your impressions of this hire, because to me it seems like he is a guy to build the future of this program, but his first season, I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out.
First and foremost, Coach Mullen wanted everybody to see those Jordan 4s on his feet.
Oh, really?
That's first and foremost, because Florida is making the transition to the Jordan Jumpman brand.
Right.
They're moving away from Nike. Now they're Jordan school. So that's why he has the Jordan 4s on his feet. And he also said that he's the opposite of Donald Trump. He said, quote, "I'm the opposite of Trump. I'm here to fill the swamp, not drain the swamp." That's literally.
I was like, where is he going with that?
That's literally what he said while having the 4s on his feet on the desk here at the hotel.
That's hilarious.
So
that's hilarious.
One of the key things he called, Tebow called him, or he called Tebow, however you want to say it. They talked
right
before Mullen took the job, and Tebow gave that speech. You know how Tebow is.
Right,
He's like,
right.
"Listen, this is what Florida means to me, and what Florida means for you, and you need to understand that if you take this coaching job, you can be a legend, and you're going to follow the footsteps of Spurrier and Urban Meyer, and you can write your name in history. You built something at Mississippi State, but here you can be a legend."
And he also said, and you need to do what's best for your family.
And he absolutely said that too. He values family. So that's one of the other things. But as far as on the field goes, Mullen said that he wants to build his offense around his playmakers. He's not married to a system. He's not married to the spread offense. He's not married to the spread offense. He's not married to a certain style of play.
Right.
But at the same time, he wants to take advantage of but at the same time, he wants to take advantage of the playmakers he's got on the field. And I don't know how this is what he's going to do with Felipe Franks and the incoming Emory Jones.
Right.
But I feel as though if Florida can get their quarterback situation right, then they've got a sleeping giant, because in 4 years, the past 4 years, they've either gone 4-8, or they've won the SEC East.
Right.
In 4 years. So the talent is there, the consistency is not.
Right,
and the
absolutely.
consistency is based upon, in those past 4 years, certain players having unbelievable years.
That's how it's been since Herbs left. Let's just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
The talent's always been there, but the consistency hasn't.
There are also people that brought up the argument that Dan Mullen is 5-29 against ranked opponents. Now, that 5-29 record was while at Mississippi State. So you take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
Now, when they had it rolling for that one season, with Dak being the signal caller, and they climbed into the top 5 that year, then yeah, they were rolling.
Right.
But keep in mind, it's not like Mississippi State is this football power.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
They're not.
So, it's not. So that 5-29 record, you have to look at it with a grain of salt a little bit. But I think, again, as with most of these teams, it comes down to quarterback play. Felipe Franks has been inconsistent so many times this year. Emory hasn't played. I remember Urban Meyer specifically flying down to Middle Georgia himself to watch Emory at camps.
Right.
And I think Emory will be a great player. I think Emory has the tools to become a great QB. But how soon he gets this shot, I hope it's pretty soon. Because we've seen what Franks can do.
Right.
I don't trust him.
Right.
But I think Emory has got the tools, and I think if the coaching is great around him, then I believe that Florida can go places. It may not be this year, but next year, definitely.
Yeah, and it's going to be that Florida-Georgia game is going to be interesting. Just to close out here, Itoro, what are your thoughts on Chad Morris?
I think Chad Morris is a great coach. I'm really impressed with him. I was very impressed with him today. I was impressed with him at SMU. I was very, when you coach high school football in the state of Texas, you have to, let's just say, it's not enough to know what you're doing.
Right.
And it's not enough to be just to win games. You also, in his situation, he not only had to coach, but he also had to teach classes. And in his case, he didn't just teach classes, he taught math classes.
Right.
He was a statistics major at Texas A&M. That's not underwater basket weaving.
Right, and he sounds very Texas too.
So the fact that he's very, very, he understands the opportunity that he's got at Arkansas. He talked about how Arkansas went 4-8 last year, and many people are picking them last in the SEC West. But he says that the biggest rival, and Lord knows Arkansas has tons of rivals based on geography. The biggest thing is that he said himself that our biggest rival is ourselves.
Right. That's definitely coach speak, though.
And yes, that is coach speak. And yes, that is by definition a cliche. But he does have a point. Arkansas they've always turned out great offensive linemen. They've always have going back to the 60s. But the biggest thing, they don't have enough on the skill positions, and maybe it's because Arkansas is not a glamorous school. Arkansas doesn't have the same cachet.
It's a hard school to get depth at.
It's a hard school because of where it is.
Right, because it's out in the middle of nowhere.
It's literally nowhere. They played their spring game in Little Rock while they're building. They're rounding out their ends. One of the end zones up there. But I think if they're able to I remember the Houston Nutt era when they were able to get it going, and they were gimmicky, but they turned out players. They turned out players, and they gave the big boys fits. Chad Morris, he loves that hurry up, no huddle. He loves that fastball football. And I think, and of course, that's gonna give teams like LSU, Alabama, Mississippi State a whole lot of issues.
How many years do you think it'll take for them to be competing with people like Alabama? Because they could probably compete with LSU right away. Or the Auburns of the world. I guess that's probably a fair assessment.
It'll take them about 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
If they make, and what I mean by that is, if they go 6-6 and make the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, mm-hmm. I think that's a good season.
Yeah.
Knowing that, you play in a bowl close to home, either in Memphis or Birmingham, the Liberty Bowl. I think that's a good season.
Yeah.
Even if they don't make the bowls this year and they're able to win 5 games and they're competitive, they don't get blown out, then Arkansas is on the right track.
Yeah.
Because because you're in the toughest division in college football, for one. And 2, you're in a division where the fastball teams are really good and the physical teams are really, really good.
Right.
So, let's not be dreaming too much. I think if they win 5 games, they win 5 or 6 games, and that's a great season in my book.
Right. Well, Itoro, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. I know that you're in a time crunch, and we appreciate that you've sat down with us. And where's the best place that we could reach you at on social media?
You can hit me at Picture Maine at all social media. It's PICTUREMANE. You can find my SEC Media Day articles on The Atlanta Voice, as it's spelled, The Atlanta Voice. And I think tomorrow is going to be real interesting because we've got Tennessee, we've got Mississippi State, we've got Alabama, and we've got Mizzou. So I can't wait. Just looking forward to tomorrow. Nick is going to have something. And this is another thing, as an aside. There will be people who they've been talking about the transfer rules. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah, I'm familiar with transfer rules.
But basically, everyone that's been in there, they've been saying, if the transfer rules can turn into free agency in college football. And I know Nick is going to spend 10 minutes talking about that.
Right.
That's just the way he is.
Right.
He will take one issue and blow it out to the point where you're just like, damn, I'm sick and tired of hearing about this. But I feel like as far as the transfer rules go, whatever's best for the players, I'm all for it.
Right. Because
you only get 4 or 5 years.
Right.
You know. So whatever is best for the player, I'm for it. But what I don't want to see are teams who use this idea like, okay, there's a kid at school A, he tweeted that he's not happy, or went on Instagram and said, okay, this ain't what I thought it would be.
Right.
And I get it. Those things happen all the time.
So just don't, if you have to transfer, just don't bash your school.
Don't bash the school while you're doing it. I remember when Alvin Kamara was at Alabama and things didn't go the way he thought it would, like the ways that he thought it would go, and had to go to junior college. Not one time did he put down Alabama publicly. Right. He remained quiet about the whole situation. Went to Tennessee, had a more than productive time at Tennessee, and now he's reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year in the NFL. So, you know, there's a way to go about these things that is beneficial to both sides. And, oh, by the way, it was one Kirby Smart that recruited Alvin to Alabama. Right. From Norcross High School. So, and yet Alvin and Kirby still had a great relationship and maintained a great relationship through the process. There's a way to do it without burning bridges and tearing down the school that you're looking or seeking to leave. Right. You know, there's a class way to go about it.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting tomorrow with Nick Saban. I know Saban is not really in favor for things that aren't going to go his way, but this will be interesting to see what he has to say on that subject tomorrow. Again, thank you, Itoro, for coming on the show today.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Again, we just want to thank Itoro Umontuen and Steve Choi for coming on the show today. Always appreciate their insight and fun conversation that we had with Itoro talking about SEC Media Days. And I just want to give a special thank you guys out to you guys, the listeners, especially if you've listened to this part of the podcast. But this is where we need your help. And yes, we need your help. So if you could just, wherever you see the podcast, if you could just hit the like button, we would definitely appreciate that. That like button in this internet age goes further, faster than you can ever imagine. And if you want to see where Itoro's content lives, we're going to put that in the show description. Also to check out Spaces, and you won't be disappointed. So we just want to also to if you could put a comment in the comment section if you want to talk, even if you don't really want to talk about the content that we talked about in this podcast, but you have an opinion about the Atlanta Braves, for example, or Atlanta United, feel free to put that in the comment section, because this is the ATL podcast. We are all about sports that happen inside and outside the ATL in the state of Georgia. So we want to hear from you guys, because that's what Fans Favorite Fan is all about. So now check out fansfavoritefan.com. Go to it. You won't be disappointed. If you're a real sports fan, you're definitely going to love it. Thank you guys. Episode 71 out.